if we leave it this way. I'm in love with a waitress and I don't even know her name. So I ordered straight tequila.
That guitar player is Doug Deveaux. He is today's guest on Guitar Players in Isolation. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope you like it. Lots of other interviews and lots of stuff on country guitar playing. I hope you can subscribe and support the channel. And if you're returning, thanks so much for your support. Doug is an amazing guitar player, well-rooted in the traditions of country music. He's played with many greats with his involvement at the Auction Barn Jamboree and the Apple Country Jamboree. He also has run a recording studio since '91 called Sideman Studio. And many of you musicians in the Southern Ontario area have probably encountered him as a sound man at clubs and festivals throughout the area. Doug, how are you?
Doing great.
Good. It's good to speak to you outside of the corral.
Certainly is.
And the funny thing is, shame on me, I didn't know you were such a great guitar player when I did meet you at the corral. But doing some research, and I got a good recommendation from some of the other guys who were telling me, you gotta reach out to Doug. He's a great guitar player, very important in the Canadian country scene. And I was like, I know this guy. Small world. So, Doug, let's start with what you're probably working on recently. I'm going to guess, since you own your own studio and your wife's a musician and you've already put out 2 albums of your own, that you're working on some personal projects at your studio, which is also your home. So tell us about Sideman Studios and what you're up to now.
Yeah, there's one I had started probably 2 years ago and sort of just put on the back burner, and it was nice to start to get back to it and started another project for my better half and taking it from there.
So how are you getting other musicians to play on the tracks? Is everything being coordinated remotely, like they're putting their parts together and then just sending you files?
Well, so far we're still working on our own parts before we ship everything out, but there's several guys out there that are able to do stuff from home. So like Doug Johnson on steel, I've got him set up on Pro Tools and whatnot, so he can do his parts at home. Lindsay Beckett, another great player, is able to do stuff at home. So it's kind of been the way the industry has been going to some degree, but now more than ever with COVID, it makes it easier to get things done, even though you're staying at home.
Right. So it's just passing tracks back and forth, I guess, via email and then sending you WAV files, and you kind of mix it up. And
exactly, yeah.
Great, yeah.
It's come a long way since the days of cutting tape.
I know, like guitar and probably keys and steel and fiddle, probably not too bad to track on your own at home, as you don't need a ton of gear. Drums must pose a problem. Acoustic drums, I mean, unless the musician has a full setup to take in that many mics. How do you handle that?
Kind of. I'm usually doing everything to a click anyway, so we can do the drums here. I also have different people I can reach out to. Guys like Pen Post, J Reel, that have their own studio also. So easy enough to get drums put on it if I wasn't doing them here.
Small world, because this all ties in with my other interviews. I think Jay played with South Mountain, right? With Steve Pacheco?
Yep.
Right. And same with Beckett, right? On fiddle.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I've known all them folks for a lot of years.
You're definitely in the same circle, because I know Steve had a band that he was backing up Albert Lee, and he was using Doug Johnson and Don Reed.
Right. Yeah.
And I think you work with those guys all the time, right?
Yeah, I do.
Talking about Don Reed, I found it really interesting that because of your relationship and your work with him, you've been able to use your studio to do overdubs for pretty big name artists. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I guess what had happened is he was hired to do another project for Dwight Yoakam, and the powers that be wanted it done right away, so there wasn't enough time for paperwork. through the union and whatnot. So they just tried flying them down. And I guess the authorities just figured it was a little suspicious to go down for the afternoon and fly back. So they wound up, at the time, we were using ADAT tape. So the studio in California just sent me up an ADAT and had Don come in here, called Pete Anderson on the phone, and here's what he's played so far, and it's a yes or no, and then kind of took it from there. And we did the same thing for that Dwight Yoakam album. There was a Tanya Tucker album, Mark Chestnut album. So
Oh, wow.
it wound up just being easier and cheaper than booking a flight and rooms and everything else, just to have them come here and send the parts down.
So all the overdubbing was just for Don?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Is he out by you? You're out in Oshawa, right?
Well, he's about 5 hours north. He's in suburb,
okay.
but certainly a lot closer than LA.
Yeah.
So-
Oh, that's great. Well, that got you some pretty good networking there.
Yeah, it certainly did.
So when you're doing sessions, do your clients often request that you put down the guitar tracks on them?
Sometimes it's kind of a mix of everything from somebody coming in just to play something they wrote themselves, whether it be on acoustic, piano, something like that, to people that need everything done, where I have to put everything together as far as put players together for that particular session, to the guys that literally come self-contained. It's basically set the mics up and push record, so it's a little bit of everything.
So you must, in your work, also act as a producer in addition to being the mixer and engineer, right?
A lot of times, yeah. So, even as the engineer, if there's something I see is maybe outside the norm, it's still my job to mention it. So whether it gets vetoed or not is another question. But, you still kind of got to do a little bit of the producing, whether you're hired to produce or not. So, even if it's just mentioning certain things, tone-wise, level-wise, whatever it may be coming from musician-wise, whether it's guitar, bass, drums, helpful little things that'll make it easier to get a better product in the end.
Well, you've been at the recording thing for some time now. You launched Sideman Studio in 91, so I'm guessing you were using tape back then. So I'm curious how the transition went from going from analog tape to digital using DAWs like Pro Tools.
Well, going from the old analog tape to ADAT wasn't so different. There was a few things that were a little easier. Punching in was quicker, where sometimes the old analog world, you had to almost jump the gun to get it in time, because there was that 15th of a second gap, right? So where with digital, it's more exact timing. The software, it was sort of plunge in whether you like it or not. Again, it's just wrapping your head around the program and going from there. But once you get used to using software, I don't know if I could actually go back to using analog, because there's so many options to fix stuff. Things you used to have to live with before, well, I can, in seconds, I can fix that now. So whether it's a little timing or a little tuning thing. So
reflecting back, do you recall being quite adaptive to the change, going from analog to digital, or were you one of the guys at the time who was kind of holding out?
I had software actually long before I had actually started using it. And actually, Jay Reel told me there will come a day where you're just going to have to jump in and do it. And sure enough, I had a session in, and one of my machines broke down at the beginning of the session. So I guess today's the day we jump in. He was right. It's jump in with both feet and hope for the best.
I guess a comparison to live playing, if we ever get back to live playing, is will we ever all have to transition to in-ears and do away with monitors? What do you think about that?
That'd be okay. Well, for me, I'm used to using the headphones anyway, doing the stuff in the studio. it's not that much different. I know some people are going to be really reluctant because there seems to be, for them, maybe a disconnect from the crowd, not being able to interact with them as easily. So without having extra tech, like room mics and stuff like that to pick up the crowd. So.
Right. Maybe in the new world with the social distancing, we only have to interact with 3 people. So
Exactly.
we don't need any monitors. Oh, geez. I hope I'm wrong.
So with regards to live playing, with you on guitar, you've been able to back up a host of really big name Canadian and U.S. artists through your work as being part of the backup band in the Auction Barn Jamboree and the Apple Country Jamboree. Tell us about some of the guys you've worked with.
Sure. Gary Warner, that runs the Apple Country Jamboree, has been great. What he has done on all his jamborees is before the weekend show actually starts, he winds up bringing up an American artist to start off the jamboree on like the Wednesday. And we've had the wonderful time to be able to back up guys like Gene Watson, Mo Bandy, Jeannie Shepherd, Jeannie Seeley, many of the Nashville acts that have been our heroes growing up, really. So it's been an awesome opportunity brought to us to be able to back these people up and kind of play with our heroes, really.
How many years have you been playing that jamboree for?
Okay. I started out just doing sound for the jamboree. Trying to remember now exactly which year I actually went on guitar, but it's probably been 5 or 6 years doing it on guitar anyway. So we had a member change, and basically we sort of switched some members around and put Bill Littner, one of my close friends, and usually our bass player, out on the board to mix the show. Hired another fellow, Dusty King, to come in and play bass for us. But it's a great bunch of guys like Don Reed, Doug Johnson, Frank Woodcock. Craig Harley's usually there with us for the American events. Absolutely awesome bunch of guys to work with.
It's a pretty amazing backup band that you had there. We talked about Don Reed, but you also had Doug Johnson on steel, which is maybe one of Canada's best, or even tops in the world.
Well, they're definitely world class.
He's been on a ton of recordings, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Like stuff I didn't even know he did. He had to stop and think about it at one point. But, a lot of the Canadian acts, I've been working with him since '86, and I just, not too long ago, found out he did some tracks for Anne Murray, Gordon Lightfoot. So it's like, I've known him all this time, and it's like he's been holding out information on me.
Yeah. Now, you named a lot of good guys. You played with Rhonda Vincent, right?
Yeah. Again, that was at one of Gary's jamborees.
Oh, okay. And Teea Goans. Is that how you pronounce her name? Yeah.
Teea Goans.
Yeah, she's really good. She's really good. Yeah.
So how did preparation go to getting these sets all prepared for? Was there scheduled rehearsals, or was it just dishing out charts and do your own work and show up and hope for the best?
Sometimes we get charts, but usually it's a list of tunes and MP3s, distribute it to all the guys and kind of do all our homework at home.
Mm-hmm.
As far as a rehearsal, during our sound check, if there's something that, is there any danger spots we want to look at or go over, then we'll sort of address it at that point. But
gotcha.
It's pretty much left everyone to do their own homework, and it kind of comes together on the show.
So is there an actual band leader, or that's kind of taking a little bit of charge over that?
I guess I'm normally in that position.
Oh, okay.
Because Gary just sends the material to me, and then I kind of distribute it to the rest of the guys, make any changes or whatever to the tunes, and put it all on one disc or flash drive or whatever, or email. So that way, if there's any, I guess the buck stops with me sometimes.
Well, the list has a ton of standout artists that you backed up, but there's got to be a favorite. Let us know which artist was your favorite to back up.
I think Gene's probably would have been the biggest thrill for me. I've always loved his music. Not to take anything away from any of the other artists, but he's been one of my favorite singers, you know.
You're talking about Gene Shepherd.
Gene Watson, actually.
Oh, Gene Watson. Okay.
Yeah. So again, you know, as a kid, hearing Paper Rosie when it came out, never dreamed in my wildest dreams at that point that I'd be up there playing it with the real guy someday. So
That's a thrill to be able to play with an artist that you've looked up to all your life, and you know, just kind of and be playing the guitar and look over and there he is. You know, what size crowds did that Jamboree bring in on a regular basis?
I think capacity is probably around 2,500.
Nice.
Depending on the year, there's been a couple of times, like one of the first times Gene was in, it's pretty much at capacity. So,
well, according to your bio, going back just a few years, no, it's quite a few years, you toured the country with Terry Carisse.
yes, I did. Yeah, when I was 19.
Oh, wow. We're going back. No offense, but we're going back now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Certainly, it hurts to add up the years.
Well,
It doesn't feel like a long time ago, but
Right.
when you start adding up the years, yeah, went with him for about 6 months. Back when I was 19 years old, had to replace Steve Petico in the band, which pretty big shoes to fill.
Oh, that's great.
Scared little teenager doing what he can to keep up anyway. So
Yeah. So that's great. So that was just across Canada, or did you go
Yeah.
into the U.S.?
it was mostly Canada. We traveled through the States, but it was all the jobs were normally in Canada here. So
Well, Terry I was looking him up. Quite a lot of hits.
yeah, actually, the whole spiel when we were bringing him on was, I think, 6-time male vocalist of the year, album of the year, single of the year, song of the year. So a big CCMA winner. So it was certainly an honor, and I learned a lot in those 6 months.
I was looking up Terry Carisse's career, Hall of Famer and all that, but he was, opening up for just huge national acts like, Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton, but toured along with, just the greats of country like Conway Twitty and Mel Tillis and even Willie Nelson. So were you fortunate to be part of some of those shows?
Not any of the big ones. I remember opening up for the Kendalls in Calgary, but I pretty much took over at the end of the summer, and a lot of those things would have been the summer type events.
Right. The festivals.
Right. So a lot of the stuff I had done more or less was more the bar work in the winter months when I was with them. So,
I mean, you've always been more of a traditional country player.
very much so.
Yeah.
Doing the bar thing, of course, I've had to play different things, like, some of the classic rock stuff. Even in a country bar, I've found myself playing everything from Sweet Home Alabama to Paranoid. So, I never thought I'd see myself playing Black Sabbath in a country bar, but hey, why not?
Well, that request must have come from some pretty tough guys.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like I said, I never thought I'd see myself playing Black Sabbath in a country bar, but whatever.
Well, talking about, really wanting to play country and not Black Sabbath, you spent a lot of time working with Rick Jones, and he had put together a show called Gone Country, which is primarily a tribute to Alan Jackson. And for those who don't know, on I think all Alan Jackson hits, the guitar player in the studio was Brent Mason, who's probably the most recorded guitar player in history and is at the top of everybody's list for country pickers. So that just must have been a ton of work for you to learn all those tracks, and good on you, man.
Yeah, that Married to a Waitress has always been a challenge, shall we say. It's funny with his stuff, it's either real simple or really hard. So, you take Chattahoochee, that pretty much is all done on 1 or 2 strings, and then there doesn't seem to be a lot of in between. But yeah, I've worked with Rick probably since about 1987.
Oh, wow.
On and off over the years, long before he was doing any of the Jackson stuff. You know, different times between road gigs. Even when I wasn't in the band, I'd come off the road and go and sit in with him for the weekend, sort of thing. So I've been working with him quite a bit.
So is the Gone Country show like a current show? I mean, I know nobody's gigging now, but did you have stuff coming up? Has it been something that's been gigging around recently? Technically, we had several dates this summer.
Okay.
But at this point, I don't think it's going to happen. But
yeah,
we had a couple of stateside jobs and a couple up here, but not holding my breath for that to actually happen. So two next month and one in August. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's sounding like the summer shot.
Pretty much, yeah.
So. But so was it only Alan Jackson, or were you mixing up some other guys in the show?
The last little bit, instead of just the Alan Jackson thing, he's always been a big, huge George Jones fan.
Oh, okay, nice.
So always got accused or, trying to sound like George. So
yeah.
Crazy on into the heartaches and illusion on.
So, you figured, well, why not just do the two? We did part of the night was, he looks more like Alan Jackson, but probably sounds more like George.
Yeah, it's a close look. Jeans, plaid shirt, and a dreadnought. I mean, it's, and a cowboy hat. They both wear a cowboy hat, yeah.
That's kind of cool because I was talking to a joint friend, Fred Lewis, who was one of the guys who said I should get together with you and have you on the Guitar Players in Isolation show. We were talking about an old George Jones song, The Love Bug, but it was recut by George Strait, and on the George Strait album, Brent Mason did all the guitar stuff, and the guitar stuff's fabulous on that. Did you do that tune too?
I do it myself.
Yeah, no, that's a great tune.
Yeah.
So which one of Alan Jackson's songs gave you the hardest workout learning Brent Mason guitar solos and licks?
Don't even know her name.
Yeah.
Was probably, and again, at points when we were doing the tribute, there was times where I wasn't working with him all the time. I'd kind of just fill in for whoever he had working with him. So it seems I'd only do the show maybe a couple of times every year or so, maybe 2 years. So it almost seemed like, oh no, I have to learn that again and again. So
yeah. And then Doug Johnson's on steel in that band too, right?
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
Wayne Ferguson on fiddle. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So with guitar and fiddle and steel, you really can nail all that Alan Jackson stuff, because the cool thing back then when he was recording records, he had so much respect for his session players that he always kind of extended the songs, and he had this trading off. Like so many of his songs are like 4+ minutes, and it just soloing between the three, between guitar, steel, and fiddle. Actually, even some have keys in it too, so you got like 4 people trading off.
Yeah, and again, he's one that stayed very traditional, stayed with the country thing where, some guys went a little more pop, but again, had that crew, like Brent Mason, Paul Franklin, phenomenal players, and the tunes lent themselves to letting them play.
Well, I don't need your rocking chair.
You're definitely really well rooted in traditional country music, and I see where that comes from. I mean, your father, Clarence Deveaux, has played guitar his whole entire life, and he played for Smiley Bates. I looked him up. The guy had like 26 albums and sold like 3 million records. So it's clear you probably got the music bug from your dad. So get into it for us on how you got started.
Well, again, he was playing all the time when I was a kid. So I wound up kind of born into it. When he was with Smiley, I was probably only about 3 years old at that point. Still, at that point, there was a lot of different, like Sunday type shows, whether it be like out at the park or even in theaters and stuff like that, where I was able to go and see him play. So it was like from that early age, I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. So, kind of got the bug really early. As far as that's concerned, everything from having the toy guitars at that age, and my poor father, I don't know how many times I would have asked him, do you have an extra pick?
So do you remember what kind of guitars were kicking around the house? What makes, what models?
Well, actually, at that time, there was, it was actually a custom guitar that a fellow by the name of Jim Smith had made from Whitby. It was a strange little beast because it looked like a Strat, but sounded more like a Les Paul.
Oh, okay.
So he still has it, but from there he went to Thin Line Telly.
Okay.
So, I guess in theory, I grew up learning on a thin line.
So nice.
So.
Shit. Well, that beats most people's story that they played on like some Sears catalog guitar with the action an inch off the board. So at least you had the opportunity to play a real instrument.
When I started fairly early, I think I had like the little classical type thing, the acoustic. But when I kind of got upgraded to something a little more real, it definitely helped. How do I put it? Really made it easier to get deep into it and really enjoy learning playing. Like if it doesn't hurt, then it sounds better. So it gave me a lot more inspiration to learn more.
So when you were getting started, was your dad teaching you, or were you on your own, or did you jump right into lessons?
Again, even before lessons, I would have been monkeying around with his guitars anyway, trying to, I'd put a record on and try and find the notes. So even at a really young age, I was still trying to put it together myself. But at the age of 9, Dad took me down to what now is Long McQuaid. It was Alto's music at that point. The one that started teaching me is Joe Howe. So he did many years on the road with Johnny Burke and guys like that. And then after the road work, he was the house guitar player on the Tommy Hunter show.
Right.
So phenomenal player, taught me different things, not even just about playing, just, taught me a lot of things about the music business, not just the playing portion, but even some of the politics, warning me, okay, don't do this, or, kind of giving advice too of how to, some of the pros and cons that are out there.
Wow. And you were only 9.
At the time, yeah.
How many years were you studying with Joe?
It was kind of broken up. At first, there was probably 1 or 2 years at that point, and he went back on the road, and I think he was in the Air Force for a while too. So after he came home from that stint, probably around 13 or 14 years old, I started taking lessons again. But again, it was a bit more advanced at that point, because I had taken stuff from when I was younger, and even when I was 14, it was more learning the different licks. I was always after him, like, show me these licks, show me these licks. And he got me to the point where he'd send me home with a tune to learn. And it was basically, well, if you can learn that, you can learn anything you want. So I'm not showing you any more licks. So, and showed me, things about like the Nashville number system and how to
Okay.
write charts, how to read charts.
Oh, wow.
You really got like a ton of information under your belt at such a young age. I was pretty fortunate to be able to hook up with Joe.
Yeah. Again, it was quite a bit different than what I say would be the typical music lessons.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So I can't thank him enough for all the inspiration and things he's taught me over the years. You know, I've thanked him many times.
Yeah, so Joe Howe, you mentioned, played with the Tommy Hunter show, but he also played with Johnny Burke, who's a legendary Canadian who passed away a few years back. And you were scheduled to be part of a tribute music show to Johnny Burke that was supposed to be in April, but I'm assuming that all got canned because of the whole COVID thing.
So is there talk,
Yeah.
or well, maybe it's too early for talk to reschedule it, but it looked like a good show.
I'm not sure whether she just postponed it or
Yeah, time will tell, right?
because didn't know whether. Kind of hard to pick a date when you don't
Yeah.
know what's going to be happening,
you don't
right?
know.
So
You don't know. I guess you
maybe
wait till
try it for next year.
yeah. I guess you wait till things get going and then you make a decision. Yeah.
Because I guess that was the funny story. Being working with Joe all that time, learning guitar, introduced me to Johnny Burke. The funniest story was he said, "Come to me when you're 19. I may have a job for you." But it wound up that Terry actually phoned him up looking for a guitar player. So I've always teased Johnny about that. You know, you said you'd have a job for me when I was 19. You never told me it was going to be with somebody else, though.
Yeah, well, you did get a good job, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
It's just kind of cute the way it happened, I guess. But
yeah.
Well, let's go back to some of those big shows you were part of at the Apple Country Jamboree, backing up all those big name artists. Is there any kind of fun stories you could share? Any kind of weird shit that was going on?
Well, actually, the year that we worked with Gene Watson and Rhonda Vincent, Rhonda was actually there a couple of days ahead of that show. So they had sort of a bluegrass portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all bluegrass, and then the other show with Gene. And I had some questions for Rhonda, so I went and knocked on the bus, and Hunter came out and said, "Come on in." And Rhonda actually had to ask me, "So, what tunes are we supposedly doing on the show tomorrow?" Nobody had filled her in on what they were doing, because Gene and Rhonda had recorded a duet album.
Okay.
The year before that. So there's tunes that they had done together. They didn't even meet in the studio. It's basically the one show they did. They had never sang together physically. She was running late and literally walked on stage, and there they are. So no rehearsal, no sound check, just go.
So are you like telling me that you were playing the bluegrassy kind of dreadnought acoustic stuff for Rhonda Vincent?
Actually, on that one, we were doing more of the duet portion of the show.
Okay.
She had the Rage backing her up for her part of the show. So there was still her portion, and then then there was like the duet section with her and Gene, and then there was Gene's show. So it was kind of a 3-part show, but with 2 artists. So I was still using the telly, I guess, at that point.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay. All right. So yeah, she had her own group. I was sitting there. Wow. If you were also doing all that fast bluegrass flat picking, I was like, wow.
Yeah, in my dreams.
Yeah.
From one of my prior interviews, I interviewed Paul Chapman, and he discussed bluegrass. He was big into bluegrass as a kid growing up, which explains a ton about his playing, because he's just super fast and articulate at that up-down picking.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
So with regards to your Sideman Studios, is there some names that some of our viewers might know that have passed by and done some recordings, or some overdubs that you've recorded on to put on some of their records?
Well, there's Rick Jones. I've done a couple of projects for him. I've done several albums for Johnny Burke, and again, some of them some of them had Joe Howe playing on them. Some of them had Steve Petigo playing on them. Some of them were me. I guess depended where and what was needed at the time. Terry Stumption did some stuff here. Terry Carisse came in and laid a track shortly before he passed. We had Bob Teifer, who had actually played in his band years ago too. He was a pedal steel player for him back probably 83 era. He brought Mike Francis in and did an old jazz standard, and it was a pretty awesome day, just telling old stories. And it was either Terry or Peppy said, well, I guess we should get this music thing out of the way. They went in, did one cut, and that was it. And it was like, okay, let's go for dinner.
I was just recently watching, and I can't remember, it was a YouTube channel about recording, and they were talking about these great session players. And it was the comment was, when these great session players get together, they rarely talk shop. They rarely talk about music. They're talking about everything else, and then boom, they cut their thing, and then they just kind of move on. Where I kind of find, guys like myself, we just dwell in it. That's all we want to talk about.
Well, yeah, it does happen like that a lot. Like even during sessions, not that we're wasting any time, but there'll be times where, your sides are sore from laughing.
Yeah.
But it's like flipping the switch. Okay, time to get this done, do it. And, it all comes together sort of thing. But, you can still have a blast doing your job, but, you're actually getting the work done too. It's not just all tomfoolery throughout the day, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, Mike's recorded a few sessions, I think, in his lifetime.
Yeah, I think, thousands.
I think when you put his name into Google, it comes up as a top search as the most recorded guitar player in Canada.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all. That's he's a pretty amazing player. Having him in the studio and watching him work was it was actually a real treat for me. It was
sure.
Always respected him as a player, but it was like, okay, that just brought everything to a whole new level that, I knew he was good, but ouch, it's like.
What kind of tips or lessons did you take away from watching him work in your studio?
It was actually a jazz session. It wasn't even a country session we were doing. And again, it was the first take. We had to do, like the track had already been pre-recorded, had the guys come in and lay the beds. And he was coming in as an overdub. And Bob and I sat for, 20 minutes just to try and pick out the notes he played on the last chord and couldn't do it. So just to be able to sight read that tune and to be able to play what he played was just like one take.
Wow.
And it's like, yeah, that wow is the perfect word. Because, like I said, I always knew he was a great player, but it was surreal to watch it happen in real time, though.
Yeah.
So.
Any other standout guitar players that have come through your studio that just kind of like blows your mind away?
Well, working with guys like Steve Petico, it's always a guitar clinic anytime he's around. So, again, Donnie Reed. There's been several jazz guys come through. Again, not being a jazz player, I can appreciate, and it boggles my mind how they get where they are. It's such a foreign thing from my perspective. And again, sometimes they're looking at me the same way. So things like that, I've seen many of them come through. And again, the first take, there it is. There's no rhyme or reason, but they're able to nail it the first time.
So they're not doing like tons of punch-ins over the same solo.
No, not at all. It's funny especially with the jazz guys. I've found I need to make sure that the tape is rolling, so to speak, on the first take, because sometimes it actually goes downhill after that. Usually the magic one is the first one. So.
Well, I've always kind of found that there's some similarities between country and jazz, and I'm talking more traditional country, because the guitar playing was, it's always to play over the chords, which is similar to jazz. It's just although jazz has a lot more harmony and complexities to the chords and the amount of them.
I mean, yeah, like positions, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less chords in country.
I would imagine, yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah.
You get beyond 4 chords and I'm straining.
Well, working with Teea Goans is probably the hardest gig I've had to do musically, because I remember they had sent charts, but what was written on the chart didn't seem to match what I heard ear-wise. So
okay.
I remember calling Joe Howe up, and this says it's something, but it doesn't sound like that. And even he said, well, I don't know, maybe you should phone Peppy. So
was there, sorry, I'm not that familiar. I've seen a few of her videos, but
yeah.
Wait, was there is a more of a Western kind of a swing thing with a lot of changes?
Yeah, some of the stuff she does is almost jazz oriented.
Longs to kiss your lips, longs to hold you tight. To you I'm just a friend, it's all I've ever been. You don't know me.
I guess very different arrangements from the original. A lot more Western swing type feel. So
yeah, it's just I always found that the difference between jazz and Western swing was just the outfits.
A lot of times, yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
the hat and the rhinestones, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
if you put nice blazers on them, it would be a jazz band.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Doug, let's talk guitars now. You got a main one that you're always playing, or is there a few of them? Let us know.
Well, there's a few. Lately, I've been using the Telly more than anything else. The one I've been using now is actually they call it a Nashville Power Telly. It has a Fishman bridge in it too.
Oh, okay.
So there's times where if I have to do acoustic parts, I have an A/B switch that I can send out to a DI and actually get fairly passable acoustic sounds.
Oh, wow.
Out of my Telly.
Is there 2 jacks going out of the guitar?
You can do it different ways. I actually use an A/B switch.
Right, that's what you said.
But if you use basically an insert cable, like a stereo, like a tip ring sleeve in the guitar to 2 regular cables, you can actually have both independent out of the guitar. Again, I replaced all the normal pickups with Seymour Duncans and stuff like that. But
well, Doug, if it's sitting right behind you, why don't you grab it for us?
I do.
Cool.
So it's basically not much different than a standard Telly. I guess I don't know if you can pick it up, but
yeah, no, I can see it now pretty good.
The saddle pieces have little piezo pickups in them.
Okay.
And that's what gives you the acoustic tones. So, and it's a stacked pot here where the volume is, and then the back one, instead of a tone, that's the volume for the piezo pickups. So.
Oh, sorry. Your main volume is a push-pull to do both? Yeah,
like they're stacked. There's one on top of each other.
Oh, now I can see it. Okay.
Tone.
Yeah.
And this is just an on-off, so I can get different.
Oh, I see the switch there. Okay.
Polar patterns, so I can actually get 7 positions instead of just the 5.
Wow.
Just rewiring a little bit. So.
Wow. So was that originally just like a Fender? What do they call it? The Fender Nashville one?
And this is it actually came this way.
Okay.
With the exception of the one top.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it came with 3 pickups, and then the Fishman bridge. I was actually in the process of sourcing out all the parts to make my own. To get the body, buy all the parts and put it together. Actually for the Gene Watson stuff, because there was a lot of stuff that I needed to do on acoustic. So, and I walked into the L&M, and much to my surprise, there was one hanging on the shelf. So,
yeah, cool.
Problem solved.
So, when did you get that one?
That probably would have been 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Oh, okay. So what were you gigging with before?
Actually, a Strat Elite.
Oh, okay.
Was kind of my main guitar for a long time. So now, kind of depends on the job. There's different ones I bring out now, depending on who I'm working with and
Right.
what kind of music. So
Were the Strat Elites the one with the lace sensor pickups?
the predecessor actually to a lace sensor. But
Okay.
but all active. There was a whole PC board underneath. Yeah, it's a dog's breakfast underneath that pick guard. So, but a very different sounding treble boost, mid boost. Very interesting guitar. A little more diverse in tone. Again, on-off switches instead of a toggle switch. So again, I could get all the positions, not just like a five-way, but if I wanted the standard telly setting, like a front and back, it's literally just turn on whatever pickup you want.
Okay. All right. Did you do all the modifications yourself?
No, that was standard. On that guitar.
Oh.
They only made them in '83, so they kind of a rare breed, I guess, more than anything. But again, I found another used one somewhere along the way, because I'd actually started wearing some of the parts out, and you can't get them. So.
Yeah. Interesting. So what kind of amps do you use?
Again, live, I'm using an old PV Special 130 with an EV in it.
Okay, so the Paul Chapman style there.
Pretty much, yeah. Again, they're dependable. For years, I used Fender Montreux, which was a solid state 100 watt 12 little unit back in the 80s. In the studio, I've used the Vibrolux, just the reissue.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the little Mesa Boogie here too, just the little 25 watt Mark V head, which is kind of cool because I don't always need to be using a cabinet for some stuff. Again, with that, it has great distortion tones. So if I am doing something that's more rock oriented, I'd rather use it than try and get something out of the pedals.
Right.
There's quite a few traditional type country players that still gravitate toward the solid state amps. I'm thinking like Red Volkart. He always talks about playing through a solid state amp like a steel player would. So I think it's all about just having that clean headroom.
Well, again, for me, the solid state thing is just a dependability thing because, tubes act up. Just, so many times I've heard like guys with like the Vibro Kings and stuff like that. Anybody with a Vibro King says buy two.
Yeah.
Just to keep one working, right? So
yeah. Well, I guess it's all depending on how often you're gigging. I've got some pretty old ones myself. Well, I don't want to talk about them not working. So, I mean, I'm not playing live now anyway, but I don't want to jinx it.
Well, and again, I guess it depends on how they're treated too. If they're rattling around in the trunk or whether they're in a flight case or.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I guess it's a risk. A risk we take.
It's sounding to me like you're more traditional in the sense that you're always using amps. Have you experimented with some of the direct stuff, the Axe effects, the fractals, the amp simulators, load boxes, and this kind of stuff, which would be bypassing miking an amp?
Well, there have been times where I've used the pod type of thing. I haven't gone as far as like, what is it, the Kettner?
Kemper.
Kemper, that's it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've heard great things about those, but again, it's not as vital for me. I guess if I was flying all the time and I wanted all the other amps to get my home tones, because I know what it's like to have to show up at a festival and it's like, oh, I got to plug into that. So I get that, but I haven't been doing enough of that type of job to really warrant spending the coin on it, really.
Right.
but I have heard great reviews on them. So
Right. So all the stuff in your studio, you're miking amps
for the most part.
Yeah.
There are the odd time where I've just went direct. If there's something in that like some of the not so normal twin or deluxe type tones that you know, if I'm looking for something different, then I might go with one of the Sims. But for the most part, it's basically just plug. And again, I'll go through different guitars with different amps. I think even when I did my last album, I might have used 3 different amps and 5 different guitars. So over the course of the album. So
Given that I think most of the viewers of this channel are probably guitar players, yeah, tell us some techniques and some of your favorite setups for what mics to use and how you place them for miking a guitar cabinet.
Generally, it's using like a Sennheiser 609 in front of the amp, usually just off center, set up in front. A lot of times it's not so much, the mic placement isn't, I don't think, as crucial as getting the tone out of the amp first. It's basically just capturing it properly, even backing it up a little bit so it's not on the amp. If you're doing an overdub, you're not worried about leakage.
Mm-hmm.
It's letting the amp breathe a little bit more too, where you're not so worried about, like, if it gets too close to the cone, then it's going to be a little harsher or a little muddier if you're too off to the side, or giving it that little bit of space sometimes makes it a little more natural and might get a little of the room too, where it's not as sterile per se.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean.
As far as miking the stuff, again, different guitars for different tones, depending on what I'm looking for. Might use the Les Paul for certain things, like that typical jazz tone. I'd rather be using the Les Paul on something like that than trying to get out of the Telly or the Strat. Mm-hmm. I also have one of the reissue Starcasters, which is kind of it was Fender's attempt at making a 335, basically.
Right, yeah.
I haven't seen a lot before this. Actually, Joe, my teacher, had one back in the 70s there. So when I seen it hanging on the wall, it's like, oh, they're back. So,
yeah. What wasn't their bestseller?
No. Like I said, I haven't seen many. Like I've seen before they reissued them, I've seen Joe's live, and that was about it. I've seen a couple on TV, but that not overly popular. But
so if people want to reach out to you for recording, is there a website or something that they should look up?
We don't have one at the time, but I know I got to get on that.
Okay, well
maybe with all this time we have to ourselves now.
You can reach out to Doug on Facebook. But Doug, what I'll do is I'll put in the description here, when I put this up on YouTube, I'll put the info for your studio so people can find it there.
You got a regular gig at the Corral, which has been around forever. It's kind of funny. I while going through your Facebook, or it could have been Doug Johnson's page. There was a page where with you at the Corral in like '92.
Ooh, yeah.
And you were playing a Black Strat, so that must have been the one you were talking about.
It was.
Yeah. So that part's been around forever, and it's been country the whole time.
Yep, it has. Yeah. And I guess I've been probably playing there since about '84. So it's been there a while. So
same chairs, eh?
Almost.
Hey, it's still there. Let's fingers crossed. And fingers crossed, it's still there. I know current management, Cindy and Alan, are great. Great people. Yeah, let's hope for country music and for musicians that they pull through and come out the other side of this whole COVID thing.
Yeah, for sure.
third leg of your business is live mixing, live production. The clubs or festivals, outdoor festivals and shows providing sound and lighting. So, how does that kind of factor into your workflow?
Yeah, usually the summer, that's my mainstay for, I might do the odd playing job, but production is definitely my mainstay work these days. I'd like to be doing more playing. I have more fun playing.
Sure.
The production pays more, but it's a lot more work too. If I could walk in and just carry my guitar and my amp in, that'd be beauty. No, production is, for probably the last 10, 15 years has definitely been the majority of what my work has been. Like the studio and the live thing. Just recently we started doing some video production too. Doing like demos and stuff for bands for promo.
Oh, great!
Oh, another service that we're now offering. My better half and Zhao there has a few kick-ass cameras now. So between just doing the audio portion, we can basically come in, take a band, mix them, and literally go right to the cameras or to a thumb drive. From there, mix it as if it was an album or a live production, right to video. So,
right, yeah. You just sync it up after the fact, but yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's great. I mean, you got the ability to mix a band.
Yeah,
so you can get the audio right, you get the video, and you learn the tricks on video editing, and away you go. Yeah.
You're a perfect example of somebody who's made their livelihood completely from music, and you've done it on kind of a three-prong factor. You got the live playing yourself, you got the studio, and you do live production and lighting for shows. So yeah, I mean, it just really shows how much work and how much thought and planning there is to make a livelihood out of the music business.
Yeah, and at one point doing all three usually worked, but with COVID, not so much.
Hopefully, we'll see where this goes. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
So, Doug, like I've asked all my other guests on this Guitar Player in Isolation series, at the end is to play a cool lick with a bit of an explanation.
Hi, I'm Doug Deveaux. I'll be doing a bluegrass style lick that I came up with years ago, based around the key of G. It'll be a series of notes played with both pick, finger, and pull-offs. I'll be using my Nashville Power Telly and just plugged straight into my Vibrolux 68 reissue here. So here we go. Okay, now let's try it one a little slower. I can slow it down any more than that. It usually goes by pretty quick, and sometimes the notes change every time I play it, so to actually break it down and be able to play that consistently is a little tough right now, but hopefully I've slowed it down enough to get an idea of what I'm doing. So hopefully you enjoy it.
So thanks so much for joining me, being a guest on my Guitar Players in Isolation.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm just getting I'm getting exposed to great players, and I'm hoping as I build the audience that watches these, more people know about all these great players that aren't that far away. You can call them and hire them.
There you go.
So
Well, that was great. We got to learn quite a bit about Doug Deveaux. He's not just a sound man at the Oshawa Corral, is he? Thanks so much for watching. If you stuck around this long, I really appreciate it. If you're new to my channel, please look around. There's lots of other great interviews, and there's also a bunch of country guitar lessons. And hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification button. That way you get an email the next time I put out an interview, and you can watch it right away. I've been putting out an interview once a week for the last couple months of this lockdown. I've got lots of incredible guests lined up. So keep an eye on the channel, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.